Welcome to Conversations on the Edge with Tom and TJ, where Generation X and Millennial talk about restoration, the Edge version 3, and the world.
All right, everybody. Welcome to our second episode of Conversations on the Edge. Unfortunately, TJ's not going to be able to be with us today. He is stuck in an airport on a flight. You know, what happens when you're in the restoration business. Business comes first and everything else is second. So we'll catch up with TJ on the next one. But I'm very honored today that we have a good friend and a distinguished gentleman. Joe Weitz is a senior vice president at J.S. And very excited to talk to Joe today because there's always so much, Joe, that I always want to talk about and go over, because I love this industry and I just believe that, we could be doing so much more than we actually do, as restorers. I think we're sometimes missing the boat and we're looking for excuses. And I do the same thing. Shoot, I was complaining. I was working in my office all this morning, complaining about stuff that wasn't going right, which was quite a lot today. So after we're done, it's a Friday afternoon for me, and so I will be working over the weekend, but only in the mornings on Saturday and Sunday. But I'm off the rest of the afternoon. I've just decided, peace out. I'm going to the beach.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you inviting me on to talk about all kinds of different things here. I'll start off by saying all opinions expressed are those of myself and not necessarily of JS Held, but I think that it's not just the restorers that kind of fall into that trap. I think it's the industry as a whole. We get into these situations and ruts, if you will, where you could be doing more, you could be making a bigger impact, making some really beneficial changes, and it's just easier not to.
Yeah. Well, we've gotten, this little device right here has
Mhm.
has made us dependent, and it has helped us in a lot of ways. Like when I need an answer of something that, 10 years ago I would have never been able to find, I can find it on here. But it's made us very dependent and sometimes very lazy because, if you think about what we're going to talk about when it comes to production, the number one thing that messes up production is this thing. If I can get it to stay on is this thing.
Mhm.
Because every time it pings, every time it rings, you got to pick it up, you got to find out what's going on. And half of the time it's nonsense. Half of the time it's for me, half the calls that call that phone are, some BS stuff, trying to sell me solar at 9 o'clock in the morning or a new roof.
The amount of devices I had to silence in order to get ready for this recording was ridiculous. I think I got two phones, an iPad, two laptops, all going to do one job, right? It's getting a little out of hand.
Well, and it used to be, before we got into the digital phones and you had the analog phones, if you remember, like going out to CAT back in 99, Hurricane Floyd, Hurricane Floyd, North Carolina. North Carolina was like the last spot to become digital.
Mm-hmm.
So when you went there, if you didn't have an analog phone, you couldn't talk. And so, but not all of North Carolina. And so you had an analog phone, you had a digital phone, and a pager and then
Yeah.
a two-way walkie-talkie.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so it's just like this belt of communication devices. You know?
And I honestly feel like sometimes what we were promised is not what we received in the end, because I remember when I was a restorer, I was trying to get the company I was with at the time to switch over to the iPad, and it was brand new. It was like the first iPad that was like built like a tank, and it weighed like
Yep.
5 pounds. It was huge. Um, but now everything's getting specialized. You have your iPad for this, you still have your laptop, then you've got, your phone, and you need to make sure it's a big one so that you can read and do most of the stuff that you can do on the iPad and laptop anyway. But yeah, I feel like everything was starting to merge, and then they realized that there wasn't enough money in it. So, so now we've divested into multiple different needs. Watches, I forgot about watches.
Yeah. Well, they had to because in all reality, nothing has changed with this device in over a decade. You know,
Hmm.
you have more memory space. It can take fancier pictures. Um,
Hmm.
but in all reality, it hasn't changed. So that technology is kind of flat. And so
Hmm.
the only thing that they can do is sell boom boom, a fancy TV commercial to get people to line up to buy a new iPhone, and so
Yeah.
I'm an Android guy, and so I haven't converted yet. I'm refusing. Um, I refuse to wait in line at Starbucks or at Apple. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Ain't going to happen. I walk by the people at Starbucks at
Hmm.
at the airport, and there'd be 10 people. And I'm like, I'm going to stop right over here and grab me a Coke Zero off the kiosk. See you guys at the gate.
Yeah, yeah. No, I am part of the Apple collective. I'm a believer. I wasn't for the longest time, but it made. How we were talking about getting into a rut and making things just easy? Like
Yeah.
that's kind of what prompted that. I mean, it was an, ecosystem that, everything just kind of worked and it was seamless. And if I bought something on the phone, it would work on my iPad. It would also work on my laptop in a lot of cases. And then, of course, they divested all those subscriptions. So now, if you buy one program here, you've got to pay
Yep.
for it over on the laptop separately now. But it didn't used to be like that. But it's an easy thing. Plus, I carry work and personal in the same device. So,
Well,
you go on Cat, you only need one thing, and you can bring your entire media library with you. So,
we just haven't had that next level of, okay, the wow. Like,
mhm,
the laptop now has been around for 30 years. The smartphone has been around now since 2010, 15 years. And so we haven't had that next little kaboom, of technology. It really, who knows what that's going to be? I mean, if you would have
mhm.
thought about the smartphone, back when we were using analog and paying $3 a minute, um, it just wouldn't seem right. I was watching uh, oh shoot, Back to the Future,
Mhm.
and it was Back to the Future 2, and so it was 1985, I think that was, and
Yeah.
so they were going to 2015 is where they were the future where it. And so he was in a flying car, and all the cars
Mhm.
were flying. The exit was like in air, and there were no street. It's like, what happened? What happened?
The the only thing we got from Back to the Future was the Nikes, and I think that they were like $1,200 a pair, and they only made like 500 pairs of them. I think that was the only thing we got out of that whole deal.
Yeah, because it's like, all right, so what happened? They
Hmm.
should have went forward a little bit, 2075 or something.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it is funny how we we look at the past and I'm going to tie this into a relevant conversation here in a sec. So we look at the past, but from that past is how we get to the, through the future. And in a lot of, when we're talking about what we're going to talk about now, which is estimating, scoping, contracting, sizing our crews. How do we, determine crew size, and how do we determine what they should actually be producing? Because as you know, the number one thing that gets contractors in trouble is too much labor on the job, or it's categorized as, all consultants. You get 35 consultants on the job at $150.
Yeah.
And so, but from the past is where we draw all the information and these formulas that we've been using, you and I have been using since 1998. And so back with our days with Munters, and I know that someone had told me somewhere along the line, and I don't know that we've had this conversation, and they were like, yeah, we got, I was in one of my classes about 5 years ago, and we were teaching about the matrix and about the birth of the edge estimating software. And one of the guys in the class said, yeah, I got audited, and this guy he had that. And I said, yeah, it's been around a while. It's been out there for, 30 plus years, or nearly 30 years. And in that format, but it was in formulas before that. And I said, well, do you remember who it was? And it's like, yeah, it was some guy named Joe Weitz. And I said, yeah. But it was really cool. I think at the time you were with LMS. And it was like, yeah, man, they were busting my balls, and about labor and everything. And the beautiful thing was, he was like, man, I wish I would have known before, but now I do. So that's what we're going to talk about now is what everybody in the restoration industry should know. And so all based on stuff that we've been using for, I think some of the tools that I teach in large loss mastery, I was using in the World Trade Center in '93. After the terrorist bomb, back when Nancy and I and Bill and Buddy Burroughs and all the people, we were with MF Bank, the restoration company, and so they've been around for a long time, and they're around for a long time because they work. And every restoration company, every restorer needs to understand what they should expect out of their people, production rate. And everything has a production rate. And, just like we were talking about cell phones, just for everybody that's listening that doesn't know, okay, so I got to get into my camp. There we go. So if I have 1 billion bottles of water that I need to produce, what do I need to know? I need to know how many robots or how many people does it take to create 1 billion bottles of water a year. And because it doesn't matter if it's robots or people, it's still production. And that's the one thing that we don't really teach, other than, in my classes, where we don't teach people what to expect out of their people. We teach them what to expect out of their equipment, but rarely out of their people. And it's very, very important. And it's felt really good when he did tell me that. He says, yeah, it was Joe Weitz. I said, I know Joe. It's like, and I was like, cool. He's out there using it, and he's using the old matrix. And so tell me your story with the matrix, with the formulas, what your thoughts are from from a independent consultant, I know you're senior VP at J.S. Held, how
Mhm.
all of this plays in that Tom just isn't crazy.
No, so the beautiful thing about the formulas behind the edge are, it plays into something that I tell the insurance community at large. So when I go out and I'm talking to the adjusters, the carriers, I talk about what hasn't changed in the industry, right? Which is the actual the process, the labor side of things. You still have the same people doing the same things as they used to. We have not advanced technology to the point where we've gotten some crazy new tool that we can throw in our toolbox that is going to make life that much easier. Um, so when I approach it, I approach the matrix and the edge as it's a cheat code that you still have to know how to use properly, right? So you still have to have the experience behind it. You need to be, well versed in mitigation, how it works, and the hows and whys of what you do and how you do it. Um, I'm going to drag you back into nostalgic, pop culture territory here a little bit, but I think of it as the Konami code from Contra back in the 80s, right? So if you know the Konami code, you got 30 lives. It didn't play the game for you. It didn't get you to the end of the game, but what it gave you was an edge
Mhm.
on the rest of the process, right? So odds were you can get to the finish line with 30 lives. So that's kind of how I look at it is where when I go out to a site to do a rough order of magnitude for a carrier or for an adjuster, once I'm done with my walkthrough, probably within 15, 20 minutes, I've got my number.
Mhm.
And like they're always like, wow, like the contractor hasn't, they said they need at least a day or two to pull it together. And I'm like, but why though? Like, have they not seen this before? You said something great, and I kind of stole it, and I gave you credit for it during a presentation I did on Wednesday to some adjusters, and so I did put the plug in for you there. But I was talking to adjusters, and I said, this hotel job has been done thousands of times, maybe not by you specifically, but it has been done across the country, around the world, the same type of job with the same kind of circumstances. And, once you have the edge, the formulas, and all those things that are behind it, you have a wealth of knowledge in your pocket, essentially, that, it's taken 25, 30 years for you to kind of, codify here and put to work. But it is, it's a cheat code to push you forward, and to be able to walk around a job site for 2 to 4 hours if it's a big job, and then spend 15 minutes to a half an hour and pop out an estimate, with a bunch of documentation to go with it. And not a lot of contractors can do that right now.
Well, and what drives me crazy is they can.
Hmm.
They just got to call me or send me an email or
Right.
come to a
Yep.
class. And but everything that we're talking about, everybody should and could do. And from the adjuster side of the world, and as you know, well, there we go. Spam calling me. Um,
The
that,
New Jersey Turnpike is looking for you right now. You have a fine.
yeah, yeah. That what's the other one too? That there's fines. There's a parking. There was
You've got
they,
a package stuck down at the postal
oh
service.
yeah, yeah. Send us some money. Yeah, whatever. But yeah, the all everything that we're involved with, and all of the quick estimating, all of these things are based on real data. Um,
Mhm.
because the one thing that none of us have is too much time. And we were talking about one thing that hasn't changed is we literally get as much out of we can out of that we can out of 7 days out of the week now. I know, back in the day, you used to you didn't send emails on Saturday and Sunday. That you didn't do
Yeah.
that. You didn't text people.
Hmm.
Now I'll get an email on Sunday. I'll answer it. I'll get one on Saturday. I'll answer it.
Hmm.
If I'm around. But things have just changed, and so and the one thing that's changed in the restoration world is we're working a little bit less efficiently. Number one, because of these.
Hmm.
Every time it rings, you got to pick it up. All that kind of stuff that slows you down.
Hmm.
But in all reality, everything else has stayed the same. Like you said, we're still drying and cleaning. Basically, that's all we're doing. It's not rocket science. What we've done though is we've tried to turn it into rocket science, and then that turns into a whole nother level of something that's just like, okay, all right. So back down. So you got to go back to that example that you used. Look, guys, this isn't the first time this job has been done. This is the first time that you have done this job. And I understand you think you're the biggest and the best, but it's been done 1,000 times before. And all that data is out there. And what I challenge all the restorers to do, all restoration companies and restoration owners, is to go into your files and understand how you're performing on your jobs so that you can start to look at what works and what doesn't and start plugging in what works and what doesn't. And the edge, and the formulas in the edge, they have changed over the years because we're working a little less efficient. Um,
Hmm.
but it's all based on we don't have enough time, so let's get there now. Let's get there. Let's get our
Hmm.
number now. We've overcomplicated estimating in restoration. It's like
Hmm.
a lot of the stuff that we're doing for estimating now is really for the invoice. It's really to back up the invoice, but we're doing all this stuff on the front end that is really built to support your invoice so that you can get paid. It's really not needed for the uh, for the estimate, but it's the world that we live in.
Yeah, and I think you'd be interested to hear that it's not just on the front end, the estimating portion of a job where this comes in handy, the edge and the formulas. It's also a great way to measure how how the contractor is doing, right? Because if you know you're supposed to get through X amount of square feet in a day,
Mhm.
and you're not there, then that's the golden opportunity to change what you're doing, change the crew out, change some management structure, you know, and kind of dig into it before you get to that not to exceed.
Mhm.
And now you're out. It's your problem. And it's a great way to monitor a job, and I also use it after everything's over but the crying,
Yeah.
right? So if I get an invoice to review, I'm like, okay, I have a square footage, I've got some photos or, a hollow builder or something that I can do a walkthrough on. I'm looking at the project, looking at the square footage. I'm using this to see if we're even in the right ballpark.
Mhm.
And so there are so many uses for this tool that I hope people don't get stuck in the idea that it's just an estimating tool.
Yeah.
There are so many other uses for it.
Yeah, we've used it to come in on projects. I I always tell people, when you start a project, just plug your numbers into it, and you'll
Hmm.
see if you're short. You'll see if you might be short. You might have bid it. You might have missed something. You might not have. There might be something there that you didn't see that it will show you, and then you'll know right from the beginning, we're short on this job. So that means we need to make this adjustment. We need to make this adjustment so that we come out, on top when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I think and I'm going to plug myself for a minute, but there's going to be a white paper coming out exploring this idea, and Tom, you've gotten a chance to see it.
Yeah. Yeah. I
I'm going to
like it.
stop. I'm going to stop for a second until that phone stops ringing because I can't shut it off. I'm at a firehouse. I can't just
Oh,
go over and shut it off.
oh, so you're on call?
Yeah. Yep.
All
Yep.
right. All right. Well,
Yeah. Sorry about that.
no, no, no,
Normally it's quiet.
no, that's good stuff. Uh, so tell us a little bit about your fire, how long you been firefighting?
So I'm coming up on 10 years now. Um,
I knew it'd been a while, but
and I'm in I'm up in the mountains of Pennsylvania, so it's a very rural area. Um, and it presents, wildfire challenges, structure fire challenges. And I definitely, from the restoration background, it definitely informs a lot of times when I'm fighting fire.
yeah.
Do we need this much water, or are we just dumping water on it to dump water on it? But yeah, um,
So when you're at that box store that's on fire and you're dumping all that water on it and you're thinking about, what if? What's the cost on this going to be?
oh yeah, oh no doubt,
The
no doubt.
restoration side of it.
Yeah, we had a medical warehouse not that long ago, and yeah, no word of a lie, we were on top of this roof, 60 feet in the air, and I was thinking to myself, I'm like, this is going to be so expensive. This is so expensive. What's happening underneath us right now?
Forget about there might be an explosion or something going
Mhm.
on.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just
I'll send you a picture of it, Tom, and then I'll put the caption underneath it. And it's me after the fire was out, and I'm just, like I pulled all my gear off, dropped it on the roof, and and you just see I'm kind of puked out, and it's just gonna be like, man, this is gonna be expensive.
well, hell gets you on the job as quickly as possible, man. There's
No word of a lie.
no
No word of a
delay.
lie.
No delay. You
Mm-mm.
get out there and fight that fire, and then you're.
Hmm. I'm in there,
But just so
but
everybody knows that Held is not doing firefighting.
yeah,
Joe,
yeah.
his side. Well, not, I don't want to say side hustle, but it's another. How do you explain that? Another career? Is it a
It's just kind of like it's
how do you
another
look?
facet of what I do. It's that Munters emergency services thing that was beat into me when I was a young lad, where, if my body isn't constantly in fight or flight mode, I don't know what to do with myself. So
Yeah.
as I kind of took on different positions in the industry, my wife is like, man, you're bouncing off the walls. You gotta do something else, like do something extra.
Yeah.
And my kids wanted to join the fire department, so we all joined together, and now seven people in our family are all in some form of emergency services. So,
Well, good, good.
yeah.
I know exactly what you're saying. It's like, I know for me, having traveled so much and been on so many catastrophes, and what I do now, I don't travel as much, and I'm in the field, but not like I used to be.
Mhm.
They used to love it because I love the travel, and they love to put me in places for months on time, and I didn't seem to mind. Um,
Mhm.
Now that I've gotten older, it's like, damn, I should have got more money. but
Yeah, it.
but 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 yeah, once it's in your blood, you just I don't know, for me, it's like I don't ever look at like slowing down, I guess,
Mhm.
or stopping. I should say I'll slow down, but I'm not going to stop because I just can't imagine. I'd have to create a business just to be busy because you know, it's only so much golfing, so much fishing, and so much sitting on the beach that you can do. Traveling
Mhm.
is great, but even at that, you kind of get tired and you're ready to, but business is always, or being active, having something that keeps you active is so important. And I think
Hmm.
for everybody out there, it's just extremely valuable to have many, have things going on. And because I don't know, I don't imagine that you've ever been, and have never been a couch potato. It's never been difficult for me to get. In fact, I turn the TV on a little bit, and right now we're out of football season, and so we have stuff going on. Basketball and football, or basketball and baseball, and
Hmm.
and which I'm more into football, and so all my talk stuff is sports. And
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
the news, I turn that crap on in the morning and listen. I'll go through the three major stations, and they're all saying the same thing, but just from a different view.
Hmm.
And then I'm like, whoop, that's off. And then maybe at lunch for a little bit more, and then boop, that's off. It's like I can't take it. But I even do that now with the sports, because when they're in between, when because usually they're talking about a lot of football. So when they're in between it now, you're 100 days. They got 100 day. We're 100 days out from the start of the NFL right now,
Hmm.
and so they're thinking stuff up. It's like they're like, I don't know, they're like comparing Joe Montana and Mahomes, and it's like, oh,
Right.
why are we doing that? Or like, talking about stuff that doesn't make any sense or matter. And that's kind of what
Hmm.
our media has kind of done that to us. So, lately it's like, does it really, why are we listening to this? So,
My football seasons are very short as a New York Jet fan. So
yeah.
normally by week two, my but leading up to week one, it's all the hope in the world. And by week two, I'm out back, digging the hole to throw all my memorabilia back in the hole until next year.
Well,
But
that's
yeah,
true. That's true. Every year the Jets are going to the Super Bowl every year.
every year.
It's like the Cowboys. You're going to the Super Bowl every year until, the end of September.
Yeah, I am convinced until Gary V gets a hold of that team that it's just going to be perpetual disappointment. I mean, I waited until I was 17 years old to see the Rangers win a Stanley Cup. So, I mean, what's another 30 years?
Hey, I grew up a Viking fan, for Christ's sake. So it's like they haven't done anything since 1977, and you got to get a calculator out on that one.
Hmm.
40,
Hmm.
40. Oh God, it's almost
Oh
50
man.
years. Almost 50 years since the Vikings been in the Super Bowl. Is
Wow.
that right?
Yeah.
77.
77. Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm a 77 kid, so you know, I'll be 48 this year. Yeah. 48 years.
48 years.
Yeah.
And back then, I mean, it was like they were there, you know,
Yeah.
they went 4 years and lost 4 years. And they
Hmm.
didn't go 4 years in a row. That honor belongs to the Buffalo Bills. Thank God for the Buffalo Bills, because before Buffalo Bills, it was how pathetic the Vikings were, going there four times and losing. And so like dang,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
it's all good. It's we get through this time of year. It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
we're
Well, and
it's September, or June. We're talking cat season.
it's crazy, right? Did you see the 10-day? And those things rarely pop up. But let me tell you, every conference call that I've been on for the last 2 days is, do you see the 10-day on the Gulf? Like it's like a 980, like okay, we're 10 days out and it's June. It's going to be June.
Yeah.
But here we are. I mean, I haven't looked at the Gulf temperatures, but I'm assuming that they're not really terribly warm at this time of year. So,
Well, they're all it's the the um the Gulf is going to be active this year. I think this year on the Atlantic, the Atlantic season is going to be a later season this year,
hmm
probably late August, September, um,
hmm
because of the sand, the Saharan sand again, which destroys
Yep.
the storms,
Yep.
and so they don't even get started, off the coast, and so um, we'll see how that goes. But the Gulf has been, I mean, that's where the monsters have been coming from, for
Yes.
the last the last what 5 years. I mean, I think we have a category five almost every year now, and we used to, Andrew,
hmm
before Andrew, there was only one or two before Andrew, and now it seems like we have one, or maybe even two a year. We had Milton, and we had
hmm
or were they, one was a four and one was a five, Milton, and
Yeah. Oh,
my memory just sucks, but
Helene. It
Helene,
was
yeah,
Helene Milton.
yeah.
Helene Milton. Yep.
And
Uh,
the golf, and I don't think that's going to change either, because the waters are warm. Uh,
hmm
and the golf, is more has that real shallow uh, float out, whereas you have more of a drop off. It's shallow and then it drops way off in the golf, but that's that shallow part that gets that surge going, and that's becoming a bigger issue.
hmm
Um, But what do you see for restorers, going forward when it comes to cat season? When it comes to, I know here in Florida, we don't know what we're doing. It states all over the map when it comes to insurance now, and when you can get into a building, high rise
hmm
building, they won't let you in it until an engineer's been there to look at it. Um, so some of these buildings go, a week to 2 weeks before you can even get them. You can sit in a parking lot with your equipment, but you can't really do anything.
Well,
What do
and I think it's going to be an interesting climate this year and for the foreseeable future because the the onus is now being pushed back out to the states, right? So whereas FEMA was a bigger presence, it's going to be retracted um,
you?
quite a bit. So now it is going to be up to these individual areas.
Mhm,
And when I say it's being pushed out to the state, if you think about a large portion of the cats that you've been on, it's the localities, it's the counties individually that kind of control those local areas. So I think it's going to be a little bit less organized, if you can imagine that.
mhm.
It's going to be a little bit less organized when it comes to access, which there's pluses and minuses, right? So like
Yep.
if the county can't get their act together, there's going to be a lot more restorers that are going to be able to get into areas before they normally could have in the past. Just don't do anything dangerous. Safety first. But I think that what you're going to see is uh, as much as we harp on, and I know through your courses, you bring in Sarah and she talks about it, but the support for the invoicing is going to be so key because there are carriers that are using things like AI scrubs, where you're not even dealing with a person anymore, right? Like it goes off to the AI software, they get a report back that says this, and this is wrong. It's going to be on that restorer to prove why they
Yep.
invoiced what they did. Um, so I think support is going to be crucial. I think the scope of work to begin with, getting an agreement, starting that dialogue with your claims team. Don't I understand that the client is the insured, right? That's who their contract is with. But if you don't involve these other entities and start building relationships with them, it's going to be a tractor pull, and nobody wants to make a career
No.
out of a tractor pull every day of their life. So, I mean, if that's what you want to do, I mean, more power to you. But, everybody that I talk to on the carrier side are like, why don't contractors just do this? And I'm like, I throw out my hands. I'm like, I don't know. I don't understand it because when I was a contractor, we had to do this or I didn't get paid. Like,
Yeah, and it go into a lot of times in the Xactimate world, um, guys are turning in their Xactimate estimate as an invoice,
Mhm.
and it's like, on what world did that become a reality? Because you still have to back all of it up. You still got to back up your labor, your equipment, your supplies and materials. And if somebody's listening, to this podcast and you're hearing this for the first time, yes, that is true that you do have to back that up. So if somebody like Joe gets a hold of your invoice of your or your Xactimate estimate, he's going to be asking you for all the backup that supports everything that's in that estimate. And so we've just gotten lazy, and
It, it, it's
in throughout the industry, it's become that way.
100%. And I see people rely on tools and utilizing tools incorrectly, improperly, if you will.
Yeah,
So, to your point, submitting an Xactimate estimate, if you go to Xactimate 38 times on the main landing page, it just refers to it as an estimating software. It's not an invoicing platform. Your invoice is the one-page cover sheet that goes on top of it. That's an invoice, but the Xactimate is an estimate. Um, but it's a time and materials format that is expressed as square foot pricing.
yeah,
That is the best way to describe Xactimate, and to see someone submit that as an invoice without support, and I submitted my Xactimate. It is a square foot thing.
mhm,
Okay, but you've got all these line items in here for extra labor hours. I want to see all the labor hours. Why
yeah,
would I not want to see that, right? Like if I order a steak and someone, puts, unicorn tears and truffles and all this other thing, and I can't see it on the plate, I'm gonna I want some backup because
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
see it.
yeah,
So,
yeah, and they don't find out, and they don't find out until it's too late, and
hmm
then it's like, oh, I wish I would have known that. And so again,
hmm
if you didn't know that, now you know. Um, and that goes for adjusters also. You're supposed
yes.
you're supposed to be getting backup on these things, and so they make sense, but
hmm
because when you don't do that, you get into a situation where the system gets tweaked. Somebody learns how to use the system, and that's because even when people are using the edge, they're like, oh, so so they're talking to me like it's an invoice, and I'm like, no, this is an estimate. Your invoice is what you actually do. Your estimate
hmm
is what you're estimating that you're going to do. Your
hmm
invoice is what you actually do. And then everything supports what you actually did, not what you actually estimated. And so and sometimes people look at you like you're speaking Mandarin or something. And I'm like, no.
I would think of Edge as the guardrails on the side of the bridge, right?
Yep,
The Edge, Xactimate, all of these tools are the guardrails on the bridge. You're still expected to drive yourself and get there, right? But these things are kind of to give you some insight. Okay, over there is bad, over there is bad. This is kind of the direction we need to be moving in, and it's so helpful in that manner. And that's why I kind of was harping on it earlier. is it's not just for one thing. It's not just an estimating tool. You can use it for, kind of evaluating your crews. You can use it for evaluating your process
Mhm.
because over time, and it's a shame TJ's not here, but he's one of those folks that takes
Yep.
the data from that and analyzes, okay, where are we doing good? Where are we not doing good?
Yep. Yeah,
So
TJ has, and what I love is when I have people that come to the class and they'll call me up, 4 months later and say, Tom, we got this job and we're using everything, and man, it's our first $400,000 job. And and then I'll run into somebody else and be like, man, what you've taught me opened my eyes and changed how I view my business. And that's what it's all about. It bothers me that people get stuck in the ruts and in little boxes. Get out of the box. And it's all there waiting for you. You're actually sitting on all of that information. And just like, in our last podcast, we went into TJ. TJ opened up, how he went through 124 jobs, and he knows exactly what his production rate was on each one of those, what he should have expected out of each group. And he got all the way down to where he found out that, the system, once you get down under 500 square feet, it it's not really built for under 500 square feet, but
Mhm.
that it is what it is at that point. And so,
Mhm.
but it was just fascinating information. And we're closing in on 3,000 estimates done in the Edge since 2023. So a year, what are we creeping up here on at the end of this year, it'd be in December, it'd be 2 years um,
Mhm.
that we've been doing the data, and we'll be almost at 3,000 estimates, and we're close to 300 million in that time frame that have been done in the Edge. Now, the average for most guys are smaller, 10,000 square, $10,000 jobs. Um, the bigger projects, bigger companies are doing some monster projects, and we have some companies that are over 800 estimates. They do
Mhm.
almost two estimates a week in the Edge in the system. And so for me, the way I look at it, and everybody that uses it, they're just like, it's like, Tom, it's so simple that I think sometimes the it's so simple that I think people just think that it doesn't work, um, because it's too easy. And again, this isn't rocket science. Nothing has changed in our industry, really. Like we were talking about the cell phone, the smartphone really hasn't changed since 2010. We get more cameras and blah blah blah, but really, that a necessity in life? The fancier
Mhm.
camera. Now I like it, but because I'm old guy that I can do cool things with shit, and so
Mhm.
I like technology, and but it's it really comes down to people using the data that you have, understanding what your performance is on your jobs, and then plugging that into your future jobs. When you do that, you're always running successful projects. You always know where you are. You always know where your production is. You know what, so when that invoice goes to be paid, you can be confident in it. And my feeling, Joe, is a lot of guys, they don't know what their costs are until they turn their invoice in, and they don't even really know how it got there, or much about it. And so when they talk to somebody like you and you have questions for them, they don't have answers. And so
And as an experienced parent of of five, let me tell you, it is very much like dealing with my children at times. And because as soon as they're caught, immediately, if they don't have an answer, then everybody's mad all of a sudden. And it's like, no, it was just a question. I just had, help me understand this. And then like people will get upset. And I'm like, okay, my parental alarms are going off right now because if this is upsetting you that much,
Something.
clearly, something's wrong.
I never put that together. I don't have any kids, so I don't have that advantage. So
Hmm.
I just have to go off logic. But does it make sense or does not make sense? And
Yeah.
but yes, it's absolutely true. And I'm one of those. I always wanted to know where my projects were at all times. And I created my first spreadsheet in 1992, and because I wanted to know where the project was, because I thought that, if you're doing your jobs right and you had all your numbers right, you could actually produce an invoice the day that you finished the job. And that was my vision of restoration and that never came really to be,
Hmm.
but I
Hmm.
still try. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and I think people, if you're in that mindset, but we've gotten very distant with things now, and where we're looking for quick answers, we're looking for quick solutions, we're looking to push a button, and boom, there it is. And um, it's not like that, but it doesn't take that much work. It takes, every day you got to do your input, you got to look at things, you got to make sure everything is going right. But it's all the tools have been out there for everybody to do all of these things very efficiently. Have been there for, you know,
Hmm.
92, the first laptop came out. I mean, that kind of got rid of any excuse for not being able to take care of anything, but that didn't change anything. But, it was supposed to turn us into a paperless society, but it didn't. It turned us into, we create more paper now than we ever did. And and the computer is part of that. But in '92, they said by the year 2010, we were going to be paperless, and we're not there. And one of the reasons is because we I don't know. I think we're 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 at a place that's weird. We're not, we haven't had that next thing that takes us. So now we're
Hmm.
creating things that make that we think make life easier, that really
Hmm.
don't. And then it shows in things like our invoice, where we thought we knew what we were doing, and now we just want to get paid for whatever we did, even though what we did doesn't make any sense why we did it. And 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 it just, it bothers me to no end. I'm a stickler for that kind of stuff. I'm not a freak about things like that, but because I like
I-
to
I'm a big
have,
I'm a big proponent of the three tap. If it takes me more than three taps to get to my answer, then whatever the tool is adding to the work I have to do, right? Um, so there's a lot of good tools that exist for what we do as far as documentation, this, that, and the other thing. But like I use a program to design my own forms for JS Held, and um, that program, if I have a user that needs to get something and it's more than three touches on their tablet, then I've created more work for them. If it's not giving them the answer, it's not searchable. Um, I think that the next thing, yes, it's going to make us lazier to an extent, but I think that the potential is there. I mean, the idea is always to be more productive, right? Like that's everything that we've been given all along is you're going to be more productive. And it's like, okay, does this thing have Snake on it? Like, does it have Centipede or whatever that first Nokia game was that, you sat in the car and,
Yeah.
but, but I think that the potential, like maybe even because we're still somewhat a tactile, you know, we haven't outgrown that yet. There's not enough people that are ready to take a screen. They still need to feel the page turn. Like maybe it's something. Maybe that's something. Maybe there's something to that.
It is generational. I think because I'm a paper guy. I I
Mhm.
I like to see it in front of me. I have my calendar over here on my desktop, and if I'm good, I might get it onto my computer, onto my smartphone.
Mhm.
But I'm a paper guy, and I have paper files or whatever. Got my files lined up in my file rack. It's like, oh, all right, got everything. Boom, boom, boom. And so, for audits and things like that, I have no issue with that because I have every single paper that is involved with every single piece of business that I do, and it's all
Yep.
in down in the warehouse. And
Mhm.
and you tell me what year you want, and so on and so forth. But because I'm one of those guys, and I do think that by the time your children are my age, 61, you're probably going to be really close to where we're producing almost no paper on from a personal standpoint. I think
Mhm.
businesses, might be a while, but we're still going to have all that paper in storage, which they can't do anything with, and it would take centuries to to digitize all of it that's in storage. So it's going to take either a asteroid,
I think they just haven't figured out where certain industries will transition to and pivot to. And I think until we have answers for how different industries can make money off of it, then there is no incentive to completely get rid of it, right? Like there are medical records facilities and entire industry in and of itself. So like when everything started to go digital, it's like, wait, but we still need the history. And then they started to get into scanning and digitizing market. And but you have to leave room for these people to go somewhere in
yeah,
order to, and allow them to monetize where they're headed. And I
yeah,
think that's probably the missing piece for what we do sometimes is, we're ready to make a leap technologically, whether you're talking about energy or, digitizing of documents, but until you figure out where the future revenue streams are going to come from, you cannot destroy
yeah,
that service. So,
yeah, yeah. Because I'm guilty. It's like I know if today they said, okay, from now on you cannot. There's no more paper. There is no more paper. You just have to learn how you learn how to adapt. It's like,
mhm,
but the paper industry is going to be pissed off, Georgia
mhm,
Pacific and everybody. And so there is all those driving factors that keeps the the past alive.
mhm,
And it does prevent us from truly moving forward because in all reality, the laptop came out in 1993. It's 2025. Um, we should be a lot more paperless than we are. And
mhm.
I'm looking around my office right now. I get paper everywhere. And now if TJ was on here with us. He would tell you he doesn't do anything with paper. He's a millennial, and he's completely paperless in his system. So when he came to the class, because we were teaching, because we teach everybody, how to do it manually. So you can take that and you can either do it manually or can do it digitally. However you want to do it, it's up to you. What it's all about is the steps, the procedures, what you need to do and what you need to do on a consistent basis. And so, but he's taken all that and digitized it. And so that's the millennial. And so it's fascinating. Number one, I really have a hard time, you know, once I passed 60, it was like, you got to be kidding me. Is this real?
Yep.
Is this real?
Yeah.
And then replace a couple hips, and it's like, yeah, it's real.
Well,
But
and if you look at
exciting.
even, yeah, if you look at my children, the eldest one is in, he just kind of went over into his late 20s, and the youngest one just turned 14.
Mhm.
And the youngest one does not know a world without touchscreens.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what that's like. Like when he was a baby, he used to go up to the TV and he thought it was a touch screen and he was really pissed off because it wasn't working right, because it wasn't doing the thing. But the older one, is very much he understands the world before that, but even then when he was young, I think I had a BlackBerry at that time, so he doesn't know a world pre-BlackBerry.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's
So,
it's we'll start wrapping up here too, but
mhm.
but and I can remember I was watching one of the morning shows. I won't say who it was, but it was the liberal leaning show that's on in the
Mhm.
morning. And because, like I said, I listen to all of them, and they all annoy me, and then I turn them all off. And because I'm an independent,
Mhm.
so in 2010, they all had their Blackberries out, and they were going, and the smartphone was just coming out, the iPhone. And I can remember it clear as a bell, and I wrote it down on my calendar because I was like, I'm gonna remember this comment. And it's like, yeah, I'm gonna keep my BlackBerry, that smartphone. That's just for kids to play games on. And it's like, yeah,
Mhm. Yep.
yeah, yeah. That's like, yeah. I don't want to get in on Google at the ground floor. No, no.
Yes.
That's not going nowhere.
Mhm. Mhm. Yep.
And so, but
Yep.
it does take a while to get out of that, and Bitcoin now is kind of what, I know what I wish to hell I would have invested in Bitcoin, 10 years ago,
Mhm.
when I wasn't given it any credit. And then, then I, run into people that are going to the Maldives and everywhere else. And it's like, damn it. Yeah,
Yep.
missed it. Missed that one too.
Yep.
But Joe, thank you very much. It was a great conversation, and it goes by so quick.
It
And
does. It does.
and but in closing, what is something that you want uh, restorers to know? And just as a lead into that, I'm not an employee of JS Held. I was asked that at my last class in Dallas. And I said,
Mhm.
what's your relationship to JS Held? Because we've been working together, and Joe and everybody out there, Joe and I are working on things together, and with between the two companies. And so when I started Large Loss Mastery, it was about narrowing the gap between the restore and the adjuster, the third party administrator, everybody that's involved now. There's a gap that grows. And the gap shows up in the invoice, and the gap shows up in the documentation, and the gap shows up in how people view projects. And so this year, I reached out to Joe, and he's been gracious enough to work with me, and I'm thank you, Joe, because we've got some really cool things that we're trying to do to narrow that gap. And so I'm very happy that you're here. I am not an employee of J.S. Held. Um, Joe is the senior vice president with J.S. Held, and he has there's a little bit of a new vision at Held. And so tell us, give the Restore world a little bit what message you would like for them to have here as we close.
Well, and I think the most important thing is that, to understand that when you have a mitigation consultant come to your project, we're not enemies. You know, um, you know, I think that, the default for consultants and contractors is to be a little bit standoffish, not trusting of each other. But I think if everybody comes at it, that we're all going towards the same goal. We're trying to restore this property to pre-loss, pre-loss condition. We're trying to do the right thing by the insured, right? Um, all of that is true, and that's true for both sides. And I don't even, it's really a collaboration. And the quicker that everybody can get on the same page, the better off everybody is going to be, right? We all don't have to agree, but if we can all just get on the same page, then I think that everybody comes out a winner.
Mhm.
And it's up to both sides to do that, right? So I can't come onto your project site and make you look bad, or like, all I'm trying to do is understand the process by which you are doing what you're doing, why you're doing it that way. Are you supporting it? Um, but it all boils down to doing the right thing, right? And whether or not you're doing the right thing. And it's easy for everybody else to tell if you're doing the right thing, because everybody has that detector right down there in their gut of whether or not something is correct. Um, but you know, stay calm, stay cool, collected, we'll get through it. And um let's just try and understand both sides a little bit, right? Because it doesn't do me any good to put out, I once had someone ask me, why are you trying to put me out of business? And no, that's not the goal here.
Yep.
um so I think that that's really important, is to understand that everybody has a job to do, and if we can get on the same page, then it makes everybody that much more effective.
Yep. I agree. It's for me. I prefer negotiating versus fighting. It's like, all right,
Hmm.
so we want to waste our time, and we've talked about how we have less time today. I don't know why you would want to waste your time fighting over something that maybe you don't need to be fighting over, and but I still see it all the time. Guys will have this invoice that is just like, I'll look at it and say, man, it is high. And they'll be complaining, about, they're going through an audit and they say, we got to do this and all that. And I'll say, all right, so take it and cut this, cut that, cut this in half, do that, boom, boom, and go back to them and see if that's all right. Because you're fat here, you're fat here, you're fat here, and you can see it. It's not, it's, it's like, whenever any of us put on a little bit of weight, you know that you got some fat, and it's the same with our jobs. These restaurant, we know that there's fat in there. We know that, and it's not on every job, but we can look in the mirror of that job and say, it could lose a little weight, and
Right. Yeah.
you know, and and but I guess sometimes we get so used to just turning in whatever, and you get paid, that when you don't, all of a sudden, then it's a big deal, and
Hmm.
and somebody's just trying to hurt you or put you out of business, or and maybe, maybe that guy that said that, maybe his business wasn't doing well, and this was the job that was actually gonna help him. And then it's like, oh, but if your business isn't doing well and one job is gonna help you, you might want to consider something else.
Mm-hmm.
It might
Exactly.
it might be time.
Yep. Yep.
Well, Joe, thank you very much. It was a pleasure. We'll have you back on when we have TJ up, and we have some new things coming on with the Edge. We just did a whole bunch of new updates for ATI. ATI had a whole bunch of requests because all of our updates come from users, and because all I can do is bring stuff to life. I'm not a developer. I just have ideas, and other people make them reality. And so it's really cool. We got it's what it's becoming, and so I'm hoping that we have some new announcements, by the end of the summer that could be really cool also. But we're going to wait on all that kind of stuff. But I'd love to have you back on. We'll get you before. Or maybe we can get you in the middle of hurricane season. We'll get you out on a loss.
with no internet, just a.
Or we'll have a podcast at lunchtime in some coastal town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, live in person.
Live and in person from. I almost said Lake Charles. Oh God!
Oh, easy,
Lord have
fella.
No, if there's anybody from Lake Charles, there's nothing wrong with Lake Charles. But
I just personally feel that the fine folks of Lake Charles have had enough for about a decade or two.
Yes, yeah. We can. You can go through a building boom, everything. We don't have to go to Lake Charles for a while.
Yeah,
I would say
for sure.
The rest of my career would be good.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. It's always a pleasure.
Well, thanks.
Thank you, my man. Cheers.
All right, we'll talk soon.
Thanks for listening to Conversations on the Edge with Tom and TJ. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And if you like what you hear, leave us a review. Join us next time for another Conversation on the Edge.